We're here today largely because 15 years ago, police forces in the UK started to invest in body-worn video. Early in the beginnings, there were just a few forces that were thinking this is something that could work, that could be beneficial to the way that we police, to protect officers, to gather better evidence, and to reduce complaints. It wasn't until 2013 when there was the first kind of academic report that was taken with Hampshire Constabulary that looked at actually what difference are body cameras making in the police. Before that, different forces dabbled with it, but there was no kind of real evidence or backing behind, does this actually make a difference, other than people's anecdotal evidence, anecdotal stories. So in 2013, there was a report with Hampshire Constabulary, as I said. On the Isle of Wight, every police officer was given a body camera, and they wanted to see, does this make a difference? And the report that came out of that showed actually that complaints did massively drop as a result, because as soon as you said to someone that incident was recorded, and we actually know what you said, and we know how this went about, people dropped their complaints, false malicious complaints. The other thing that happened was that there was much better evidence. So one of the really kind of big key headlines from that study showed that domestic abuse incidents, reported incidents, went through the roof. It went up by 600%, and they thought, what has happened in this time frame on the Isle of Wight? It's obviously not that people are being abused more, it's just that now with the footage, the police can actually use that in court to prosecute people. Before, you needed to have the victim give a statement in court, and obviously with domestic abuse it's a very difficult situation, and victims don't often want to give evidence in court against their abusers. But with body camera footage, suddenly they were able to actually move things on. So there were fewer complaints, better evidence, and officers were being protected as well. One of the features of the cameras that the police are using is there's a screen on the front. And when people see themselves, just like when you walk into a shop and you see the TV screen, and you recognise you're being filmed, people alter their behaviour in front of a police officer. So how did we get from that to where we are today? Well, after police were using the body cameras, and now every police force is using them, different organisations started to notice this and see actually they are making a difference. So we had sort of local authorities, parking wardens, start to use them. They thought, well, we have some aggression in our job, we get false complaints against us, people can sometimes get a bit upset, and we need evidence in court occasionally. So they thought, well, we could benefit from them. But then pubs and clubs thought, well, you know what, we've got a guy outside, sometimes gets in a bit of argy-bargy with people. People say they were pushed by a bouncer, or if bouncer has to remove someone, they say, oh, you bruised me. So these different organisations started to use them, and then hospitals started to pay attention as well and thought, well, do you know what, as I'm sure you guys all know, we have some of these problems ourselves. We have people, members of the public coming in, causing problems. Occasionally we have to treat patients who don't want to be treated or are angry at the care they're receiving. And so body cameras went from policing to security to suddenly there are body cameras inside the hospital. I've got a video now from Barnsley NHS Trust, who are these guys. Their LSMS Mike Lees, just explaining a little bit more about what problems they were facing in the trust and how body cameras are making a difference.
Hospitals are places of high emotion. You know, we have babies born here on a daily basis. You know, people find that they've got quite serious illnesses.
People attend the emergency department for varying different reasons and can be in various states of emotion and stress. So there are occasions when patients can become aggressive and threaten violence, and unfortunately attempt to commit violence to the staff.
I've had plenty of verbal aggression and plenty of threats of violence, people threatening to kill me or find out where I live and come and kill me.
We'd researched the issue of body cams quite extensively. Obviously the police and local authority colleagues are using body cams, so we've got quite a bit of experience.
We've had a few incidents from the emergency department where the security team have actually implemented the body-worn video, and that's been given to the police, and then the assailant apprehended from that.
We had an incident where we used the body-worn footage. It was quite an aggressive female who assaulted one of the security staff. The female had to be restrained on site until the police arrived and arrested the female, and that actually went to court. They used the body-worn video as evidence, and we got a result there. We got a conviction.
I feel definitely a lot more safer with it, because then nobody can make a complaint against you. They're saying, he thumped me. In fact, you've got the camera there saying, I haven't touched him. So it does work both ways. Protects you and also protects them.
I think it makes us feel safer knowing that the cameras are around, because it modifies the person's behaviour. I think it's like to calm them down, and if not, at least you've got the confidence knowing that your side of the story is going to be told.
It's definitely made a difference to us in those specific areas. Overall, I think it's for the security team, it's another tool in their box to help with any issues of violence and aggression to patients or to staff and visitors.
So that was the step from policing to body cameras inside the hospital on the security guards. And security guards, there's only a couple of them. It's difficult to cover a whole ward sometimes, or different wards at the same time. So what some trusts were thinking were, well, it would be great if we could have a security guard on every ward, because that would probably deal with a lot of problems. But obviously that's not feasible. So if the camera is making such a big difference and it is calming people down, then perhaps we could try putting a camera on nurses instead, or ward matrons instead, ward managers. Perhaps that would be the next step. And so you might have known, which we'll come on to in a minute, that Northamptonshire NHS Foundation Trust then released a feasibility study on the feasibility of using body cameras in NHS trusts. Before we get there, this was a staff survey we did in an NHS trust, which will remain anonymous. But what we were looking for, we were looking, is this a problem in the NHS? We know that security guards are benefiting from these things, but is it actually something that body cameras could make a difference with? So this, we asked 34 nurses in a trust, and these were some of their responses. So the first question, it's cut off slightly, but the first question was, I spend a considerable amount of time dealing with aggressive behaviour in my workplace. And the green line is strongly agree, the blue line is agree. So more than 80% of nurses responded saying, I spend a considerable amount of my time dealing with aggressive behaviour. The second one was every week I encounter instances of physical or verbal aggression, so every single week. Strongly agree, more than 50%, and then the rest pretty much made up of agree. So there's only, I think, 4% there, or 5% that disagreed with that. So you talk about 95% of nurses dealing with these kind of things every single week. And then the next question was, dealing with aggressive behaviour often gets in the way of what I want to be doing. So if you think about a nurse, they want to be there because they want to take care of people and look after people. The last thing they want to do is have to deal with violence and aggression. That's getting in the way of what they want to be doing. It's going to be adding stress, perhaps tainting their enjoyment of the job, all of these kind of things. And the last question, if body cameras can make a positive difference to the way that I work, then they are something that we would welcome. And again, lots of agreement there, both strongly and just generally. We asked another question that was more specifically, can you recall an incident where you wished you'd had a body camera? And this is just a small collection of the 34 results that we had, but these kind of, with a broad brushstroke, summarise them all. So recent assault on a staff member, so this is happening every day almost. I had numerous allegations against me. A lot of incidents, numerous assaults on staff by patients aware of their actions, incidents of verbal aggression towards staff and other patients, which is later denied. Verbal aggression, which was usually worse when no one else was present, and regular incidents of verbal and threatening behaviour. So this is a problem that nurses face. It'd be great to have a security officer on every ward to try and deal with some of these. Obviously that's not possible. And this is, so outside of the NHS, this is, these are two ITV news reports from last year. These were just two from a selection of many I could have found. Is violence getting worse? And nurse calls for action to stop attacks by patients. So inside the NHS, this is a problem. Outside of the NHS, people are starting to perceive this as an issue. So what can be done about it? The body cameras that the police are wearing are obviously very aggressive looking. They're big, they're black, they're chunky. They don't sit well on a nurse uniform. They aren't really fit for purpose for all sorts of reasons. And this is why Calla was born. It was a camera that took kind of the learnings of the last 15, 20 years of police body cameras, but condensed it into a size that was much better suited for nurses. Wasn't too heavy, was very easy to operate, all of these kind of bits and pieces. And then Northamptonshire NHS Foundation Trust took these cameras and did a feasibility study. They were looking at, is it actually possible for body cameras to be used on nurses? We know they work on police, we know they work on security guards. Can a nurse actually wear it? And this is a short video sort of summarising their experiences in their study.
Well, we've shown that body-worn cameras are effective in a mental health setting, and we feel that they should make patients and staff feel more secure and improve safety within the trust.
The staff were very engaged right from the very beginning, and I think part of that was because we got our research fellows involved and this was going to be published.
It's definitely been an impact, and I've seen some other reports where people have been wearing the cameras and they've flicked it on and the patient has then stopped what they're doing straight away.
Having the camera now and how things are now and before we didn't have a camera, there's a massive difference.
I think I can honestly say there's a reduction in physical assaults to people like me.
I think the cameras make us more aware of the situation, and it can really help to de-escalate a situation as well.
So the process is still quite similar, but then you've got the added benefit of the camera being there, recording what is going on and supporting the situation, and potentially it de-escalates a situation that could go on, because you're saying the cameras are recording now, and sometimes that does lower the level of aggression which is happening at that present time.
The staff were very encouraged by the innovation. I think they were talking about reduction in the number of people requiring a physical restraint team.
So an example of when I found the cameras helpful is that I responded to an alarm. We had a patient who had been assaultative in the past, was very angry, attempting to leave hospital whilst being detained. Admittedly, there was a lot of posturing and a lot of verbal aggression, but one thing I did notice throughout the entire interaction, he kept from time to time looking at the camera, which I suspect might have modified his behaviour somewhat during that incident.
Just kind of make you feel safe and make the patient feel safe at the same time, knowing that whatever is happening at that point of time is being caught on camera.
As a staff member, I feel a lot more safer wearing the camera. I feel secure in the sense that I know that, I'm doing the job correctly and I'm protecting staff as well as protecting patients. So I would say, I feel a lot more secure wearing them, definitely.
I would say we've had a positive experience and it's had a positive outcome for our patients, and the patients have said so themselves, that in terms of its applicability, it is possible to use body-worn cameras.
So I see no reason why that can't be rolled out to other areas of health, such as district nursing or GP practices. So there's no reason why not.
Okay, so that was Northamptonshire. And the premise to the study that they did was very basic. It was, is this feasible? Are patients okay with this? Or is it something that's going to make care and treatment difficult? What about staff? Are staff going to be okay with this? Is it going to actually improve their job? That's kind of the very basic level of what they were trying to look at and achieve. And as you can see there, they sort of said, yeah, this works. Patients are happy with this. Actually, some people were saying that it improves the care that they were receiving. And staff are happy with it as well. There were members of staff there themselves with their own words saying, I feel safer, it makes me confident in what I do, I know I'm doing a good job, but actually this sort of backs me up. So this was a kind of landmark on our journey to where we are today. This was a big landmark in that it's the first time it was done and sort of studied properly. And we'll come on to in a minute just West London, who took it that extra step forward to say, well, actually, we know it's feasible, but actually what difference does it make? And we'll come on to that slide in just a moment. But we actually went back to Northamptonshire a year later after they had been using the cameras. And after they'd had just a few cameras on different wards, they'd put more cameras in the same wards. And it was interesting to hear what difference that made. Because what was happening before was there was one camera on one person, and if an incident was happening down a few corridors, that person would have to turn it on and get there, and by the time they got there, it had sometimes been diffused or had escalated, and they were trying to ask, well, actually, if we put a camera there and here, does that make a difference? So this next video is them talking about how they've sort of progressed their project and what difference that's making.
When we had the introduction of the cameras, at first staff were kind of apprehensive because we didn't really know what we would expect.
The original pilot that we did was to give one member of staff on each ward a camera, and the idea was that we wanted to test was whether the use of body-worn cameras reduced violence and aggression in the hospital overall.
We occasionally get patients who want to leave the ward, can present as quite hostile, and the interaction's been recorded.
It's only when an incident begins to occur that what we do is we announce the fact that we're going to start recording the incident, and that's when the cameras are employed.
The second we can see something escalating or bubbling, if that makes sense, we're aware that maybe it's the right time to switch it on.
When it came to phase 2, what we wanted to do was to test that even further, so that every member of staff on one ward wore the camera at all times, compared with those areas where only one person was wearing it.
One camera won't capture the whole incident, so it is really useful to have more than one camera.
And now that we've got the full 12 cameras, we always have camera footage available if an incident was to occur, so that way we could have a snapshot and see exactly what happened.
It gives us the opportunity to review information very, very quickly so that we can get a true picture of actually what happened.
Prior to having the cameras, when incidents did happen and I was reviewing incidents, I was relying on statements from staff. One of the biggest differences now is I'm able to see footage of what actually happened. I log into Calla and I get to see the footage from the cameras on my ward. And then you can file it, you can code it as to how long you need to keep the footage for.
It makes it a lot easier to resolve issues with regards to complaints or serious investigations.
Staff can also view the footage, learn any lessons to maybe improve their practice and, explore other potential verbal interactions that could have occurred.
There is increased confidence now amongst the staff. The idea of the body-worn cameras was that they are an aid to what we are already doing. What we don't want them to do is to replace proper, skilled nursing practice.
Before we had the body-worn cameras, in my opinion, I was a little bit sceptical. Since we've had it now, I don't remember before we didn't have it. I feel that it's lightweight, sometimes almost feel like it's part of me.
It doesn't feel like you're carrying something that's big and offensive and obstructive. So especially during restraint situations, staff don't feel like they're being impeded by something that's obstructing them.
For any other hospitals that are looking to maybe use body-worn cameras, I would always advise yes. It puts the patient safety at first, and it just really boosts our all-round quality of care. I would definitely say it's something that is working really well for us as a trust.
So that was Northamptonshire NHS Foundation Trust. Moving on to West London Trust. So Jim, who is this guy in the background, I guess some of you might know Jim. Jim, who was meant to present today, did prepare a slide deck, which he's happy to share with everyone. So you'll be able to see that. We'll share that with you guys afterwards. So you will be able to see kind of what he said. We've also got a short snippet of Jim speaking at a previous conference we did, just giving a short little anecdotal case study of when the body cameras are being used. But the next thing is West London Trust. And also, first of all, we have Jim. So we'll hear from Jim first of all.
We've got another lady who, within our women's service, when she goes on leave, it's in her care plan now. She wanted it written into her care plan that when she comes back from leave, she wants the body-worn camera used when she's being searched, for that reassurance that nothing untoward has taken place during that search. So we've got another chap. I went recently to one of our other male admission wards, and this guy was refusing medication. The staff were trying to offer him medication. I stepped in to kind of help with that, and he was like, obviously I was an Irish, various different things, because I was trying to offer medication. He said, "I'm not doing this unless we're on body camera, all right?" So we went downstairs to the intensive care ward. Cameras were turned on, and said to him, "You know, this is brilliant. I'm really pleased that you want to make sure that this is all above board, and I can now explain the same thing again." So we went through it again. Eventually he did take his medication, but it was nice that actually he felt he wanted to make sure that this whole narrative and discussion was captured on camera. So for me, it just made sure that I'm using the right terminology, so I'm not swearing and stuff like that, and I'm not actually escalating the situation. So a really good reality check. Our women's service were fantastic with using the cameras kind of religiously to start with. And that's where they've noticed the biggest reduction in verbal abuse. And for those of you who are, like myself, working with kind of violence reduction in staff, that's probably one of the biggest areas, got that long-term compounding factor that means staff leave or they don't feel supported or they end up quite traumatized. Yeah? So that verbal abuse is oftentimes the biggest killer. One lady in particular said, "You've now put a plaster across my mouth, haven't you?" Basically saying she was historically somebody who would be very verbally abusive and threatening, but now she said because she felt the consultant would see the footage, she couldn't verbally abuse staff. So it stopped it. I'm really pleased it did, because I know some years back we had meeting needs and managing distress document came out from NHS Protect, and that was aimed really at dealing with that lower level violence. But if we can reduce verbal abuse, it may be that we can actually keep staff longer.
That was Jim talking, and he's got endless stories. If you know Jim, you know he can talk and talk and talk. And he's happy. He said to us before he's happy if anyone wants to speak to him about their experiences in more detail, that he's a happy contact. He's happy for you to contact him. Those were just anecdotal stories, but West London also released this paper that you may have heard of last year. It's called The Use of Body-Worn Video Cameras on Mental Health Wards, Results and Implications from a Pilot Study. So it's taking it the next step. We know it's feasible, but actually what are the results and implications of using it? What happens as a result of putting cameras? And the key findings, as you heard, he was talking about verbal aggression, but there's also an associated reduction in the seriousness of incidents in local service admissions wards, significant decline in the use of tranquilizing injections during restraint incidents. And if you are from a mental health trust, or if you know anything about that, it's quite an expensive thing to do. There's a kind of a big debriefing follow-up process, takes a lot of time and money essentially. So being able to reduce, I think it was 10 tranquilizing injections in comparing the previous periods to the period of the pilot, 10 to 0. So that was a huge decline. And body cameras associate with reduction in the overall seriousness of aggression and violence in reported incidents. And then anecdotally, as Jim was talking about, a lot of verbal stuff as well, in particular wards. And that paper, if you've not read it, is available for free. It's been published, so you can find it. Another thing that West London Trust did was a couple of staff surveys. So actually asking the staff themselves, what impact do you think body cameras had? So 80% thought that body cameras would have a positive impact on their day-to-day role. 86% thought that body-worn cameras would help reassure both staff and patients. This is quite an interesting thing. If you think about body-worn video, I think our instinct a number of years ago was that it's Big Brother, that it is the state watching the people, and that if we put it into a hospital, it would be the nurses watching the patients, or it would be the managers watching the nurses, or something along those lines. But what's been really interesting is that it kind of positively affects everyone that's involved with it. Jim was talking about a few patients who actually request that it's turned on because it helps them feel better. And he was also saying that it makes him act more professionally because he uses the right words. But then also, if you're able to reduce kind of violence and aggression and there's better staff well-being, then that helps the hospital as a whole. So positive all round. And 100% of staff had encountered incidents of verbal or physical aggression at least once a week. And then sort of following this whole process, Stephanie Bridger, Director of Nursing, had this to say: the pilot provided us with really useful data, supported the use of body cameras on our inpatient wards. Data shows that the cameras help reduce serious incidents, modified behaviour in a positive way for both staff and patients there. Again, this has been a great innovation for us and we'll be rolling this out across our trust. Feedback from end users. So we then asked them anecdotally, like, how do you feel about this? What do you think? I think it prevents lots of aggression. I've seen a few occasions where the incident has de-escalated, believe this to be helped by the camera being turned on. Initially sceptical, however, can see that body-worn cameras have had a positive impact on patients and staff. And better treatment for patient respect for staff as well. It's interesting that actually there's a greater respect given to staff as a result. This is a tweet on the far left from Jade Thorne, who's a nurse at Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, part of West Mids Trust. She posted this after being given the camera to just wear for a day, I think it was. And her words, which was quite nice, was, "Thank you for helping me feel safe at work." And that gentleman there is Trevor Post, who is the LSMS at that trust. Sort of a big advocate, believes in it, has seen it work in his trust. And then the Nursing Times posted this as a response to the West London Trust paper. Nurse body cameras reduce serious incidents at London Trust. It's kind of painting this nice positive picture about NHS trusts working to try and combat this. And now finally, my last slide. Now this isn't based on any kind of specific numbers, but this is representative from our experience of the adoption of body cameras in the NHS. We just wanted to give you guys a kind of feel for sort of potentially how quickly it's being adopted, in a sense, how people are finding it useful and making steps towards piloting and implementing it compared to policing. So Calla was born out of a company called Reveal, which has recently merged with Calla. And so from our experience with our Reveal hat on, is that over a 15-year period, this is generally the kind of how quickly body-worn video was taken up in policing. There was lots and lots of trials, people wanting to sort of do lots of studies and things, and then in the last 5 years kind of skyrocketed, and now it's kind of ubiquitous. And what we're finding is only if you go back sort of a year and a half, 2 years ago, those were the first sort of trials in the NHS. But what's great is that Northamptonshire NHS Foundation Trust and West London Trust have published these papers, and trusts are saying, yeah, we want to give it a go, and then saying, yeah, this works. We want to sort of step by step push it out. And the purpose of this was just to kind of give you guys a sense of, I suppose, how quickly this thing's moving. It's quite an exciting time, I suppose. The benefits are being realised. And if we're here, the other thing is that you are sort of half pioneers as well, because we're working with, I think we're speaking to 60 or so trusts in the country.